Okay, so welcome to all the listeners that are going to be listening live or that are going to be listening to the playback. This is a really exciting conversation. And I want to start with just thanking you, Scott, for taking the time and let's get all this awareness out there. Let's do it.
I love it. We need to get awareness. Without awareness, we can't change anything.
I know. I know, but I am curious because like this conversation around athletes is such a new conversation for me. Like I know your primary role has been to coach athletes, right? So we can start right there. But really, how about you first introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, thank
And
you. Yeah, so Scott Fox is my name. Some people call me Coach Fox or Coach Scott. And yeah, I have, first off, I live here in the Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. Basically a native of D.C. area, which is a rarity, and really enjoy living in my city here. It's cool to live in what essentially is kind of a big, small city with a lot of little villages. So I like that feel.
that's,
And
is that in Virginia?
yeah, it's in Northern Virginia. So we sit right on the Potomac River, just south of D.C.
And it's a small town.
It's a city of about 150,000 people that feels much smaller because of the way it lays out and because of the little villages that are part of it. So we have like a little historic Old Town area. They call it Old Town Alexandria. Then we have another area that I live in called Del Rey. And so these little pockets of neighborhoods that, over the course of the last century and a half got assembled together in one city, but it still has kind of a villagey feel to it, which is nice.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
I don't get to feel that often. So good for you that you're living in
Yeah,
that.
it's special, and I do recognize that. And I travel around the country a lot, and there's not a lot of places that I go to, and I think, wow, that's a place I could live in, because it's hard to find that combination of a village near a major city, and it's DC, so that's special too.
Yeah, and isn't that better for your mental health when you have that villagey feel? Like,
Completely better. Yeah,
like
completely
obviously,
better. Part of my other hats that I wear, I do wear my coach hat a lot. Another hat that I've had over the years is in commercial real estate, or I should say the mixed use shopping center development world. And that is the same thing. It's like we try to bring well-being into the world via real estate. At least that's what I'm trying to do now as an advisor with people. And so my overarching theme is well-being, and I work with the athletes primarily. Once in a while, though, and I have one of those situations right now where an old client calls and says, "Hey, come on over here, let's do something together." So I let the universe guide me on that, and I appreciate the opportunities.
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
When you say commercial real estate and you say somehow bringing well-being to the world through commercial real estate, like really, how do you do that?
Yeah. Well, this is a new thing, and then we'll talk about the athletes in a moment. But let's go with this, because again, I think we're talking about it for a reason. And I would say that I'll try to make the story somewhat shorter. But oh, did you hear my cat? Wow.
Yeah, I did.
Um, so right before pandemic or so, I started speaking with a friend of mine. We've known each other for many years. He's also in call it the shopping center business. And he said, "Hey, I just used your name talking about Washington, D.C." And we started chatting, and I liked what he was talking about, which was just what I said. It was, hey, the world is broken. Real estate is really in a great position to influence society, except nobody's really doing that. They're not paying attention to the human. They're paying attention to their financial return, their pro forma, how they're going to construct a financial transaction. And that's really, unfortunately, what the real estate industry turned into over the last 50 plus years, longer than that probably. And it's a shame, because great places are a way for humans to, and then fill in the blank, commune, heal, build relationships, connect in a real way. And that's what societies used to do. Indigenous peoples would have a combination of sacred places, and they would perform rituals there, and they would do it not just for entertainment purposes, but for spiritual healing purposes. And so as we kind of see these groups now that get maybe labeled as fringe or weird, go beat drums in the wilderness and that kind of thing, which I think is cool, but some people think is weird. That is a throwback to the magic of what our ancestors knew. And it is healing, and there's so much to it. So I'm out there with my business partner on this, quietly talking to select, we call it institutional quality projects. So these are kind of big, money-owned, significant projects, and occasionally having these conversations. And I think we always are interesting to them. The challenge right now is that all of these big old real estate projects were conceived and invested in under the old paradigm that is now crumbling. And the problem is the money people don't want to admit that their money is in a bad spot, and they don't want to admit that it's all crumbling.
Wow.
Yeah. So we need, and this is kind of like relationships too, is that you kind of need to get into enough pain before you do something about it. And so right now, the real estate world is doing what I've done in the past, which is go into avoidance mode, and they're not really facing up to the problems that they have in their vision of what real estate is. So again, that's why what I do with athletes and even non-athletes, it's transferable. And I'm really excited. I've got some other cool things that are working with multiple hats here, and I'm kind of in this later in life entrepreneurial streak here that I'm really enjoying.
That was fascinating what you just did. I had never applied consciousness to real estate, and you just zoomed out and you gave the whole picture in such a short time. That was like, yeah, why wouldn't we see it that way? It's crumbling, you go into denial, you have to feel the pain, you have to let the old paradigm take you apart, destroy you, and then you can build something new. So that was fascinating.
Sure.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
But
So back to the athletes though. So yeah, about 15 years ago, I got interested in trying to be the best coach I could be for my kids and the kids that are on the little league and soccer teams that were out there. I guess my daughter was about 9 years old. My son was about 7. And I played college baseball. I went to Brown, and I wanted to be a professional athlete. I didn't get there, not because I didn't have enough physical tools, game skills. I didn't get there because I wasn't consistent, which is kind of a sanitized word for didn't have the mental and emotional piece to be consistent. So I dove in, and back to real estate for a second. If the timing, you look back 15 years ago, it was 2008. We were about to enter the big old bubble mortgage crisis that was going on. And there was not a whole lot of stuff to do in the real estate world. So I got to sit at my desk. I got to do research on the internet. And I think I literally just did a search of something like, mental health baseball, something like that. And I stumbled into this world, and whoa, it's been awesome. I want to point out though to anybody listening that I was a skeptic. It took me 6 months of looking at these practices that maybe we can talk about in a moment. Because it didn't look the same as my world. I was coming from a very traditional science-based upbringing. My dad is a PhD in physics. My mother's a biologist, worked at NIH. And this is just the world I lived in. And so the world of subjectivity and things that you can't reproduce and all of this was, and not to mention the social lines that I was crossing, because it just looks weird. And who wants to look weird in society? I mean, it's a rejection, right? You're putting yourself out there. So I had all of these things that were inside of me. And when somebody says, hey, why did you do this? And I say, it's to help these kids. No, it's really to help me.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, where were you before 2008? How were you viewing, what was your awareness level at? How were you viewing mental and emotional health? Like, what was your role in all that?
Great question. So my life was, let me think of 2008. Yeah, so you look, a couple of little kids and, working hard, very traditional kind of things going on, life centered around the kids at that point. And that went on, I would say, pretty, uneventful in general until my daughter became a teenager. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So maybe like about 5 years after that, so around 2013, that's when things really started to get funny.
Let
And
me, can I stop you for a second?
yeah,
Because you said life was uneventful until then. So to me, that's like just giving pause, because many of the people I speak to, my clients, including myself, what takes us the foray into the this journey of mental and emotional health is the pain. So you're saying until then, there was no reason. So go for you. God bless, right? Not
exactly.
everybody's got, yeah.
Yeah. And then, like I say, it started when my daughter was a teenager, and I realized, oh, it took me a while, but I was like, oh, I'm realizing I'm getting my lesson on control. I cannot control my daughter, you know,
Do
and
you want to get a little more specific? Because I think this is important. This is like the human
yeah,
aspect of the
yeah. So I,
story.
so I grew up as the pleaser in my family. My brother was the agitator, you know, and I was watching. He was older, and I was like the little kid. I was like, I don't want any of that. You know, they're yelling at him, and that even hurts me to feel them yelling at him. And so I figured out, okay, my way to survive in this family is to be the pleaser, and to not just be a pleaser, but even like a high achieving pleaser. That's very typical, you know. It's like keep everything, try to control everything by overachieving, you know.
Control people's emotions around you
Yeah,
through becoming sure. You were the younger one or the older one?
I'm the younger. Yeah, yeah. And so with my daughter, when she exhibited what are just classic teenage rebellious stuff that I never did, and would have been just totally off the charts at my house growing up, was, you know, really difficult for me, very difficult.
Okay.
And so that started to get me into the pain that was to launch me deep. Um,
Yeah,
and the pain,
that's the credit. Okay.
yeah, the pain deepens. I'm trying to think of the timing of all of this. Basically, you know, that started, and I started to get deeper into, hey, you know, there's more to life, and what is there I'm missing, and all of these things that bubble up in us. Probably about most intensely 5 years ago, and before that, it definitely started before that, but it intensified 5 years ago. I think because I really wasn't paying attention deeply enough to address anything.
Yeah.
Again, avoidance was in my other form of control, right?
Yes. I always say God's gonna knock on the door, but then he's gonna bang and he might just break your door if you're not listening.
Well, he broke my door down, and so about 5 years ago, um, look, I like to. Gosh, this is an interesting part of this story. So 5 years ago, I was curious, I'll say that. And I looked at my email. I saw a message from my doctor, and it was not to me directly. It was like a mass email to a bunch of her patients. She has never, ever sent an email like that before or after. And it said, hey, if you want to learn or something about, basically it was like, you want to learn about like life and death, I recommend this book called The Red Bag. And I was like, wow. It's like, if my doctor is recommending this book and I'm kind of searching for things anyway, I'm just going to follow that breadcrumb. And I bought the book, and I'm getting a little emotional just even recounting this.
I like you weren't prepared to share this. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I haven't told this story in many years. And
What?
what happened was remarkable. So I got this little paperback book, and I start reading it, and my jaw is dropping because it feels like the author is writing to me and about me. She's writing about, her name is Paige Valdesari, little plug for Paige. She's writing about
Okay.
a lot of things, including her clients, and she's a bit of an energy worker, meets therapist, meets. And she's talking about her husband, and her husband played baseball, and he had problems with mold in his body. He had, they lived in Charlottesville for a little bit, and we lived in Charlottesville. All these things that were just so much a part of my life.
So
And
true.
I'm just,
Yeah, this was a true story.
yeah, this is a true story that she's writing, and she's basically recounting bits of her life and her clients, and trying to illustrate some point that I won't ruin the story if somebody wants to buy.
Yes, I'd like to read
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And so I called my doctor and I said, hey, could you connect me with your friend who wrote this book? Because I want to learn from her, because I can tell we have so much in common. In fact, she mentions the use of EFT. She uses that in her practice. I was like, this is just too much coincidence here. And so I did speak with Paige, and I said to her, hey, I'd like to learn what you do because it sounds remarkable. And I think the best way to learn your techniques is to experience them as your client. Would you be open for that? And she's like, yeah. And oh my goodness, what a ride. And I'm somebody that, again, came from a traditional background, and I ended up really getting opened up by somebody who's an overt, intuitive, she's a shaman. And, it was challenging to go there, but I just felt ultimately is appropriate for me. And I ended up really getting opened up and continue to be opened up and feeling wounded and feeling, like all that repression from early life and everything bubbled up. And I lost my health because, as you said, God kicked the door down, and I ended up having a series of stacked, hard to define, by Western medicine stuff, including Lyme disease. I had the mold stuff that her husband had.
Oh my.
Yeah, a lot of gut issues. And I'd say I've gotten through about 80% of that. Still have some stuff going on. And I think it's because I'm still on this journey of transformation. And so it's been amazing. And we kind of ended up in spots I didn't think we were going to go here, but I could talk for hours about this. And the good news out of all of this is that it has been an incredible growth journey for me. And because of the pain that I've been in, I'm able to help other people better, right? Because of the not only the emotional, kind of, hey, I've been there kind of thing, the technical stuff as well. I'm presently having a conversation with a potential client where this person's describing their symptoms, and I'm just like, I'm going to write down a plan for you, almost as a health coach, and you can decide if you want to work with me or not. But I'm just telling you what I've been through sounds similar to what you're talking about. And so I feel at least that what I'm gathering from this life is that we are plunked here to feel pain, not because God is mean to us, but so that we can be launched into some calling of ours. As that rubber band is pulled back in that pain mode and it's finally let go, boom, we start to really travel forward. And that's what I feel like right now.
Wow. Wow. That's an incredible story and, I mean, journey. And I'm sure you can talk a lot more about this. Thank you for going straight to the core of it, because my clients, the work I do is about, usually I meet them at their point of desperation. That's when they'll reach out to me, because my title is simply emotions mastery. So like, I don't like, there's nothing about athletes or peak performance, like that's way far ahead. And in that breaking point, it's like watching the nut crack.
Well, I want to say the same thing for a lot of my clients. I have two different kinds of clients. There are those, definitely, in fact, most of them come because they are desperate at that moment. They are in a slump, or some guys who were recently, some clients wanted to get drafted and they just felt like they weren't. They have baggage, they know they do, they've never addressed it, and now they're like in their last moments before the draft, and that's their panic mode. And we're not in society yet where people automatically think, hey, let's go to Coach Fox, who is not a psychologist, and he does some weird techniques that I've never heard of before. They have to be desperate sometimes to get there. And then once they experience it, they're like, oh yeah, this is good and it's normal, or whatever they say.
But isn't it like I'm gonna gear the question towards the athletes for a moment. I don't know if the type of clients you're referring to necessarily are athletes.
Yeah, those were
Those
athletes. Yeah.
are athletes, because what I see athletes as is the kind of person who's at least socially at a performance level where he's making it. You know, he's got traction, he's got this image, he's got success, right? They don't necessarily always know they're crumbling. They don't necessarily know their lives are falling apart because of like kind of like this the double-edged sword of being in the public eye or having success in a specific area. And that clouds your judgment of yourself. It clouds your pain. It distracts you from your pain. Do you find that?
Yeah, distract them from their pain is the verbiage that really resonated with me on that. I think they know that they have a problem, but the success distracts them from it until something really, they have to feel enough pain. Um, there's a fellow that I worked with who was a big time professional in his sport. I just want to be very vague to keep ultimate confidentiality. And this is somebody who blew through millions of dollars. I mean, millions, and had great acclaim at the height of his career. And, he had to really, he had to lose his career and lose his money to really get to the point of getting help. And I was not the first person, to work with him, and that's great. I don't need to be the first or the last. I just need to be somebody to, offer some help at some point. And it's really common. It's really common for people in society, including coaches, to confuse high performance with, hey, got my act together. Mental health, we'll call it. I don't like the term mental health, but we'll use it.
But I like that. That's what I was referring to. I see you're doing well, you're showing up, you're on the field, your performance is amazing. And then they can be just doubling down on the pain on the inside and just so unaware.
Well, and sometimes they're very aware and they simply, it's complicated, And I'm hemming and hawing here because back in, think of when it was the beginning of 22, 5 beautiful young athletes. They happened to all be women, all great. They were doing great in their sports, committed suicide within like the first 3 months of 2022. And that's very difficult to see. And again, in some cases, at least one of them, I'm aware that the coaches knew that the person was seeing a psychologist consistently, and they made accommodations, and that's great. In the other situations, I've read things like, we had no idea, and part of the mission that I'm on here is to insert the techniques that I use, especially the EFT, into the daily activities of a team practice and game, so that things can bubble up and the talking about what is bothering us becomes part of the lexicon or the conversation of daily practice. And then that way it's normalized. And not only is it normalized, but when we do this kind of silly looking tapping here,
right,
we're shifting neurotransmitters in the body. And so a lot of times in life we say think positive. In EFT we say stay negative as long as you can. And what, again, that does is it allows somebody to voice, literally speak in front of their team or their coach or both, that, hey, I'm concerned about schoolwork, boyfriend, the pitcher we're facing or the team we're facing. I don't know, I can beat my person, whatever it is. And to make that a part of daily life of an athlete and coach, I think cracks the door open for normalizing everything, plus the benefits of performance and mental health from the technique. So to me, that's like the big win that I'm hoping that your listeners maybe are connected with sports people and they're open to this. And, I've worked with some university program and would love to do that again. And other stuff that we can talk about. But we're here to talk about relationships too.
I just want to parallel what you said to the clients or the community people that are listening that are not athletes or have no connection to athletes. And parallel the um, bringing awareness into our daily lexicon, having the strength to face your social crowd, whoever it may be, you know, your family, your friends, and having the ability to share, let go of shame, and say, hey, you know, this thing's going on right now, and feeling accepted for the vulnerability, feeling seen, and being able to regularly share like that and normalize that. Whether or not you're actually going to do that in public, you know, I don't know. I think that's like, I tell my clients, like, you know, go to the restroom for 3 minutes and just, you know, come back, come back when you're ready. But normalizing that, like, you're in your kitchen, you're at a meal, you're at a dinner, and you're feeling something, normalizing that part that you said that's so important. Like, guys, this is going on for me. And right away, the shame is gone, and right away, you're not isolating. And that ups the level of connectivity, and that ups the hope. It strengthens you. So I love that
Yeah,
piece.
I think that you hit on something there that I'm just going to talk about myself today, I guess. Today, I went through a session of something as a client with a friend of mine, and we exchanged, you know, practitioner sessions with each other. And we were doing something called MAP, which is a trade name for something called Process Healing Method. And it was created by a psychologist who was a tapper. And he wanted something else, and that's a long story. But anyway, I got into this trance, if you will, that occasionally will happen during a lot of different kind of modalities. And I was deep in it, and I was really, um, for lack of a better explanation, channeling information that was coming. And one of the things was my friend asked, what should depressed people, what would help depressed people? And what came out was nothing that's we haven't all heard, but it's exactly what you said, is to be with other people, you know, and not feel isolated. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of magic in that we can gloss over because it seems too simple. And I think that that's one of the storylines that we can all address, and I want to say fight through, maybe that's the wrong words, is that we think that a very difficult problem requires a very difficult response. And that's not always the case. You know, that's why I stand up on these stages in front of sport coaches and challenge them. I said, here's what I do. It's too good. It's too easy. I can teach you. You can learn it on your own, whatever. I don't care. Somebody needs to learn it though, because, you know, what we're doing right now in society doesn't work. And if we want to even say that traditional psychology works, now we have to say, yeah, but there's not enough man hours in the day to address all the humans that need it. That's just a fact. There's only 110,000 licensed psychologists in the United States. A third of our counties don't even have one. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. There's only like 28,000 psychiatrists, and the numbers are dwindling for some reason. Nobody wants to get into psychiatry. And yeah, we got a bunch of social workers. That it's just a hodgepodge. And I met with a person. I'm trying to again give this person anonymity. There's a high-level person in the pediatric mental health world, and she said there is no mental health system because a system infers that there's some kind of order to it. And we don't have that. We have a hodgepodge of resources that make it impossible for a client, a customer, a patient to have an experience that is valuable consistently, right? So
Wow.
I think that all this mental health and emotional resiliency stuff, at the end of the day, it's going to be people like you, and I'll say me, with some humility in there, non-degreed people who take up the torch of learning techniques that are proven to be valuable. And this is not just Coach Scott talking here. The head of clinical psychology at the University of Virginia is Professor Teachman, and she said that and put it in writing. And the future of mental health is non-degreed people delivering high efficacy techniques that you're going to go down to the hair salon or the drugstore and receive your first round of whatever you want to call it. And that is exactly what is happening. There's actually a gentleman, I'm going to blank on his name. I'll think of it later. And he's African American, and he's going to the barber shops and teaching the barbers mental health techniques. And this is super. That is, again, an example of non-degreed people who are making a difference in the mental health world.
We should go to the nail salons next.
There you go. And it's really true. It is absolutely true. So my version of that is, one-to-many is teach a coach to do it, and they can help all of their team with this. We're not there yet, but that is my platform. Coaches and trainers who have daily access to athletes, men and women, can learn these techniques and not be afraid of them, and not be afraid of what happens when emotions come up. And it's primarily my generation of coaches who have the problem. They're old school guys who were coached by guys that grew up in the 1930s and 40s. And there was no conversation of that. In fact, you get your butt kicked if you cried or did anything out there.
So is it different when you're talking to the teenagers today, when you're talking to 18-year-olds? Is there a different mental health environment that you're facing inside? Is there more receptivity?
By the time they come to me, they're receptive because of their desperation. Some of them are not desperate. I'm thinking of one really cool kid, 15-year-old, who his goal is to become a Major League Baseball player. And he had a really great dad, very supportive, and he obviously was receptive to everything. And I adored working with that, right? You love to have a client that is all in. So it's a mixture. And I do believe that the younger generation is more receptive, more aware, just totally. I love them. I love Gen Z. These are the young 20-year-olds and into the teens. They are amazing. I have had college interns. I have one right now. I just love them. There's something about that generation that is, they're sharp. They are aware and vulnerable, willing to be vulnerable, talk about their stuff. And man, that's just so different than my day.
Yeah. They're a lot more open and exposed, and they're a lot more easygoing about weird ideas because it's kind of hip and cool to be on the weird side, right? Like I tell my teenagers, my own kids, like if it's weird, we'll listen. Like like the more out there it is, okay, tell us about it, because they're busy. They're listening to the politics. They're not going to go mainstream, right? They'll take like the far end opinions just because they're teenagers. So I think they're more open. There's that flexibility in their minds because of what they're growing up with. They're growing up with a very varied landscape. I didn't grow up like that. Like we knew of one school of thought in every single area. When it came to how you run your house, the finances, how you run your house, the religion, or it was only one school of thought. Today's days, you speak to teenagers, they'll tell you, well, this is right and that's wrong, and they know everything. So when you share an idea of mental health, it'll go right in because there isn't just one school of thought. There isn't that rigidity.
I would agree with that. Yes. You have 5 kids, right?
I have 6.
6. Oh man, wow. What are their ages?
From how do you know that?
I don't know. How old are your kids?
The youngest is 9 and the oldest is 20.
Okay. Yeah.
What about kids?
So they, they're definitely seeing so many different things.
How many children do you have?
I have 2. They're 21 and 23.
Oh, so you're really so you're seeing that generation. I think they're colorful. Their minds are colorful. Like I see my kids, they'll talk about anything. I mean, the only thing is they do make fun of my obsession with healing, and I always think about that. And I know, like, we haven't touched on relationships, and for all our listeners, like, if you have any questions, please ask. We're just kind of going with the flow here, and This is really fun.
I haven't been looking. I can't pretend to see this phone without my glasses, so I'll see any questions that come up here. I definitely see life differently because of my kids, and Gosh,
So how do you see your children approaching healing? Because I always think about this. Will my children be, having to go to these, yoga retreats, or will they already just be not needing to release, like what you were talking about before, what comes up after you break apart, what comes up in your body after so many years of suppression, and the need to cleanse all of that. So I see my teenagers hopefully as not needing to go through such an intense cleansing, because I don't know, but hopefully they haven't suppressed as much. So in terms of emotional and mental health, the more we bring it out in the open, the more we normalize it, the less work they're going to have to do when they're our age.
I hope
That
so.
emotion.
I do hope so. I have a feeling that there's always going to be something, and again, I think that's okay. It's an intellectual discussion, not an emotional one, though. Intellectually, it's like, yeah, a little bit of pain is good for you. Emotionally, it's like, oh, that's going to be horrible for my kid. I don't want them to go through that. So I got a foot in both of those camps. Interesting stuff. And, my kids see a whole lot more than I did growing up. And I think that I hope that at least, in their world of building relationships, that it's of a benefit. And how do they handle healing? They, at first, I think, were, skeptical and eye rolling.
Yeah.
And, to some degree, maybe a little bit still now. We don't have like this family tapping session or something like that. And I know some practitioners who do, and I just marvel at that. I think that's wonderful. For right now, my kids know what I do. And, I don't really know deeply. I think deeply, actually, they are proud of that. And they like that. I think at some level, it's still, oh, goofy dad is doing something that's strange. But as it's grown over the years and, the kinds of people that I work with and the stuff that I do, I think that it's really great that they see that. That's what I feel, at least.
It's just a question I'm always curious about. What are our 20-year-olds going to do to release their stuff? Are they going to have to go through the same intense work? This is a belief that I have, generationally, there will be layers that we've already cleared that they won't have to clear.
Now you're talking. There's a guy named Rupert Sheldrake. You ever heard of him?
Yeah.
Rupert is one of these out there kind of scientists. He's on the fringe, brilliant, and he talks about the morphogenetic field, which is basically the field of kind of everything that's out there, and that there's a phenomenon. Some people call it the hundredth monkey phenomenon. Basically, when a group of beings, whether they're animals or humans, learn something and go through something repeatedly, then the next generation gets better at it automatically. It's not about being taught, because they separate in their experiments, disparate zones of animals, and it's a fascinating thing. And so I do think that our kids will get it better, if you will, or faster than we did. And I think their kids will be even faster.
I have to say so. I just can't see it any other way, because the belief system that I have is if I cleared it, you no longer have it. It's not in our environment.
That is completely correct. In my book, exactly. And so some of the, if you want to jump into the relationship version of this, hey, we're all programmed. And that's why we have kind of challenges in our relationships. We have programming inside of us that we'll call it inherited. Does that mean through the lifestyle we had growing up, on our environment? Does it mean genetics? And it's like yes and yes. And, is there a, okay, Kat, is there a more of a even, Rupert Sheldrake kind of thing happening too? And I would say yes. And
I want to talk more about this, about relationships and how this conversation now overlaps into what have we inherited generationally in our relationships? And then how do we bring peak performance, literally,
Mm-hmm.
from the field to relationships? So go with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And if
you
anybody has
know,
questions, please feel free to ask.
right. So here's what happens. We'll use the analogy of the sports person. They have some kind of unseen block, we'll call it. Um, it's a mental or emotional, energetic block. And they know the right thing to do, right? They've practiced it many times. They've actually accomplished it many times at a high level. And all of a sudden now, it's not there. They can't do it. And so we know that they're not injured, so it can't be physical. It is non-physical. And what I will do with them in that case is take them through these procedures, either the EFT tapping or the process healing, or there's some other bags of tricks in the energy psychology world. And what we're doing with that is we are using the way the body is created to allow it, and the whole human system, we'll call it, to rewire quickly around what was perceived as a negative event long ago. And long ago might be, if you're going to get a little, out there on this, it could be past life. It could be what your parents went through. It could be generational stuff. I have worked with clients that I took a client through a meditation, we'll call it, and she was working back and just got into like a 15th century ancestor that she's never heard of, and this kind of stuff is there, and we just go with it. I don't have to know that it's exact or whatever. It's a subconscious level program that's going on, and we do that, and we tap, or we go through this other procedure, and man, things happen. In that particular case with that woman, she was not an athlete. Well, she does a lot of swimming, but she was doing this to try to help her family relationships. And basically her dad, her sisters and her dad, they had an abysmal relationship. And because her dad had been in a war and was just probably had PTSD, who knows? They were not from this country originally. There was a lot of stuff happening. And so she wanted to see if she could improve relationships. And we did this intergenerational healing kind of process. Within about a week, something happened that had never happened. Her dad called her and just, she was like, Dad. And that's the kind of things that are a little spooky and just a miracle. And, it's only spooky because we've been taught a storyline of Newtonian physics, which is like playing pool. You hit something, there's a force and a reaction, and that's all very understandable. And you can see it, measure it, quantify it. And when we get into the quantum kind of squishy world, that's not possible. Yeah. And yet that is what's going on. If you listen to all these cool guys like Rupert Sheldrake and Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton and a bunch of other awesome scientists that are out there.
Right. What do you, if we want to go directly into relationships, what do you find, I guess, primarily within your life or the athletes you work with or those in your environment, what do you find to be biggest wounds that we're carrying generationally in relationship? I know, I'm curious actually, because I grew up in such a different place than you, but I kind of think they're going to be the same.
Well, what are the biggest wounds? It depends on what your family is. So, my lineage is Eastern European Jews. And so, what's that?
You're Jewish.
Well, I am genetically, I am actually officially a Christian, and so I get to be in both. But this is another story. This is big, and so look, when you're dealing with generations of people who have been subjected to the horrors of what man does to man, there's a lot there. And so, if you're working with somebody and you are a great practitioner, and this goes into the medical field too. Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt trains many, many medical doctors in naturopathic medicine. And he tells them all now, It's like, you better ask your clients about their family heritage or lineage, not just to find out who had cancer. You need to find out, did they come from slaves? Did they, were they oppressed peoples, etc.? Because you're going to have to deal with that. And that's called real holistic medicine, when you're dealing with what the epigenetic effect of your ancestors were. Which is cool.
Very interesting,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, I'm Jewish too, and we come from, I mean, my parents are the children of Holocaust survivors, right? So there's so much in the culture that is unseen, not even unseen, unconscious, because if you're not looking, you're not even going to know to ask. But once you start seeing, and once you start asking questions like, oh, like, I am really curious, what would be the root cause of, to me, what I see is a lot of, I see a lot of codependency. I see codependency rooted in a very almost insidious way that people have no awares of. I'd be, honestly, in an intellectual conversation, thrilled to trace it back to the Holocaust because it's so rampant. It almost makes sense. But then again, looking at the American culture, I see similar strains or streaks of codependency, so I'm not even sure.
Yeah, I don't think we can, limit that kind of thing to just any particular, one particular, ethnicity or anything like that. But there's a lot there, and it's fascinating. And they clearly demonstrate with experiments with mice, and hey, we're 98% the same as a mouse, believe it or not, that they do have this happen. It's really amazing. They can subject a family of mice to some discomfort. It's kind of cruel, but they would maybe bring in a smell of rose water and provide a mild electrical shock or something to them. Again, it's really mean, but that's the kind of experiment. And let them have offspring, and then let that offspring have offspring. So the grandkids of the original ones, you expose them to rose water and they panic, and that just is an amazing thing. And so you think about the generations of people who have families that were slaves or anything, or even the Middle East where there's been fighting for thousands of years, and any kind of high stress environment. Oh my gosh, that has gotten passed on to the next generations. Maybe not 100%, but something in there has switched genes into a position that is more sensitive to a fight or flight response. And so back into relationships, what if you marry somebody who's genetically predisposed to get into fight or flight? Wow, you're going to have yourself one wild ride.
And the dichotomy of that is that it's precisely in oppressed situations that we're going to huddle closer together and seek that intimacy. But what we're not aware of is the intention or the motivation behind that seeking safety, and we meet in unsafe conditions, and you build a relationship in unsafe conditions and you have no idea. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if so in that mentality of like, what's going on around me is that's painful, let's at least have each other, right? I'm trying to like simplify it because I know that's a deep thought. So we seek the safety and the intimacy and the connection, because really, essentially, that's what we need in order to heal. But the reasons we find each other is because of unsafety so much of the time. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, and then it's like, when is it okay to be with that person? Are you codependent? Because you just cannot be safe by yourself. You don't feel safe in this world. And therefore you are tied to this person, which is not healthy. And yet that's what goes on many, many times. And a lot of times I think that we get married or select a partner before we understand all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And that,
see. That's such an important point, Scott. Isn't that the same for everybody? Like there kind of has to be a before and after.
yeah, yeah, you're right.
You I'm not sure about this because I meet plenty of singles who, they haven't married yet and they're seeking safety now. And hopefully from the safety within them, from the healed space of safety within them, hopefully they will then reach out and find an evolved partner. But how many people do you know are actually doing it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so it is, all this relationship stuff, man, it is just the ultimate teacher and, great ride. And I mean, it's just everything. And it's pain. It is real pain. At least it has been in my life, that has been and it's always the closest relationships, whether it's parents or spouse. Um, that's where it's going to come from. Maybe siblings, it could be.
Let's talk about that. I'm just checking the time because I don't know till what time we're planning on going on. It's 9:20.
Yeah,
So are we gonna go? Are you cool going for another 10 minutes? Do you have a time?
absolutely, absolutely.
Let's talk about that. Why is it that these in the world it's portrayed as this fantasy vision of like I'm gonna find that safety and love and intimacy, but when you get real about it, it's always a source of pain. Like what is that pain? What's it essentially in the world of healing?
Mm,
What is it you're looking at?
wow.
Yeah, I know that's a good question. And guys, if you have questions, please ask because we're just rolling with this.
So I think that the pain um, is always all these emotions. I'm stealing from somebody on this, but it's a it's a meter, it's a gauge, measuring the distance between what we want and where we are. So what we want is unconditional love, to be what we want is, love, to know that we are loved by God, source, whatever we want to call it. Okay. And if we truly believe that, then everything else would not matter, right? Because if you know you're loved so deeply by the creator of the universe, everything else is just irrelevant.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
And so we're separated from that source of all love. And that is in itself is disturbing. And then we place expectations on the other person. And when they don't live up to them, there's that separation again, the distance between what we wanted and where we are. And, again, a very, very Buddhist concept of try not to have attachment to things. It's okay to have desire, but don't attach to it.
Right.
And boy, are we ever good at attaching?
Attachment is suffering. That's what they say. I think that's a Buddhist concept. Attachment is suffering,
Yeah.
which is, it's like when you've been through the ringer, you would agree.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think I'll give my own example in my health journey. I was attached to perfect health. I was like, I even had my identity as that. I was known as the healthy guy in the office or wherever, eats healthy, works out, all of that. And that became my identity. I didn't think about that. But then when it was taken away, I was like, oh, this sucks. This is unfair. This is bullshit. All this anger about that. And I still have, these moments of, well, this isn't fair and I don't like this. They come up on that because, again, of my distance between where I am and what I wanted, my attachment. That's going to be my measurement of pain. Yeah. And so I guess I'm being taught acceptance of where I am right now, which is not the healthiest I've ever been. Functioning, okay. And I think the paradox there is when we can drop our attachment, well, that's when the healing begins.
Right. And in that gap of like what I'm seeing in me that I want from you, when we start to see that gap or that void as the projection of where I'm still separated from me, where I'm still feeling lack of acceptance of me, where I'm still feeling void and I'm trying to say this in some more practical words because I feel like it's a deep concept. I don't completely, I'm going to try and say it this way. I don't completely, let's say, love myself. So I come to you with an expectation of love to fill that where I haven't yet grown into loving myself. But then I actually place it on you as an expectation, and then I get attached to that reality so that when your love doesn't come through, I'm then shattered because I'm back to not being able to love myself and seeing my voice.
Oh no, man, that is the classic. I do it too, and don't you hate those words of yeah, you got to keep working on yourself. Yeah.
So
But
I know, like,
go ahead.
I think the words we always use, especially like, you know, in with the clients, is like, so if this was a mirror, what's he really saying about your relationship with yourself? And I'm always bringing it back to the internal.
Well, here's the big question that I've come to on all of that. I agree with that. However, I also agree that it is wonderful to be with another human being when there is, and here's the magic word, resonance. You know, when there is an ease of being with somebody, and I feel like I'm in the camp now of it's good to enjoy another human being, and there's something about it. I haven't formulated all of that. You can quote me on that beautiful one. It's good to be another human being. Okay, brilliant, Scott. But you know,
Just the simplicity is so real.
that's right. That's right. But it's in the contrast with, oh, I should love myself so much that I shouldn't need to be with someone else, right? So it's like I do want to love myself so much that I don't need to. However, I want to enjoy the magic of a resonant relationship with somebody.
So what I'm going to say to you is that they're both true.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to respond to that by saying they're both true.
Oh, yes.
I'm going to hold parallel realities of I love myself enough and I'm okay on my own. And I'm not necessarily disconnected because you're not here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to hold the parallel reality that there's nothing like it when I'm in that resonance and that I'm in that intimacy. There's nothing as healing. And let me tell you, that's God.
I agree with you. You know, I feel like whenever we witness something that, whether it's the relationship paradigm you just talked about, or even a performance by a great musician or somebody, and it just rips at your heart and you're crying because of this beauty, and it's like that is the divine spirit that is channeled through at that moment. And it's the same thing in a relationship, you know, and it's a beautiful thing. Even conversations we have, you know, I think you and I like to talk to people that we meet in LinkedIn or whoever, you know, and some of those meetings I just feed off of because they're magical. It is a chance to really feel that that spirit, that energy, and it's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing beyond words, and yeah, I don't know, kind of pondering all of this as I speak it.
I know. Yes, I just want to maybe wrap it up with a little bit of EFT, Scott, because
yes,
that's what you do. So let's bring all of that together into that space within me that I find when I heal, where I do connect to God, right?
Yeah.
How does EFT play a role in that? Let's just talk about that for a minute.
So, you know, we all have, let's kind of do some broad strokes here. We all have some holes in the void we'll use. I'm not smart enough, I'm not lovable enough, I'm not good enough. Are kind of three of the basics that are there. And so we could wrap things up here with a little bit of, I don't know, what, not to put you on the spot, I'll do it for myself here. I was going to say what feels true out of that. Sometimes a blend. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not lovable enough. Good enough. You know, my pleasing nature feels like that. So let's just dive in. And if anybody has something else that you think you're not lovable enough or smart enough, concentrate on that issue inside of you. So for right now, everybody tune into their body when you think about this issue. So for me, I'm not good enough. Oh, it's my heart. I just feel a tingle, a tightness on my heart. And that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I would ask anybody else who wants to join us, think about your issue, run it through your body. Just notice your body. Is there a tightness somewhere? Is there a warmth, a cold somewhere on some part of your body? Pay attention to that and keep your awareness on that. Don't try to change it, and just watch it as long as you can. And let's just start tapping on the top of our head. And just keep your awareness in that body part. For me, it's my heart. By the way, this is a simple version of tapping. You actually don't have to say anything. You just have to feel and tap. But we will say something. And I would say, part of me doesn't think I'm good enough, just as I am. And I go to my eyebrow spots, the beginning of the eyebrow near the nose. And again, I would just repeat the same thing and just keep my awareness in my heart. And I'm not good enough, just as I am. Let's go to the outside of the eye, on the bone next to the eye. And it's as simple as, again, as keeping your awareness, for me, in my heart, for you, wherever that is. And repeating it, and the words are there to help us stay triggered, if you will, stay triggered and focused on your body. And I'm not good enough, just as I am. Now I might break into a little ad lib here under my eye on the bone right here. And the ad lib could be, oh man, it's been like this since I was a little kid. I just felt like I wasn't good enough. And again, checking in with the heart. And let's go to the next spot under the nose, on that upper lip, in that little dimpled area.
Much happening in my body, Scott. Is that normal? There's like so many waves of releases happening as I'm doing this.
Thank you. That is normal. And when that happens, sometimes the discomfort will go to a new spot. So maybe my heart discomfort will go to my throat. You just follow it. You let it go wherever it wants to go. Noticing it is plenty good too. And just stay with it. And again, it's okay to start to feel different. And let's go to the chin, so where the crease is here. And you can use 3 fingers, 2 fingers, 1 finger, whatever you like. And again, I'm not good enough as I am. And I'm just, this is the stuff here. And my brother's better than me. Everybody's better than me. And I just feel like a loser. And it's okay to be negative like that. That's how this process is good. Again, think about that team standing all together and just saying, this is my problems. They're not going to get into, I'm not good enough. Well, maybe they will on a sport level. They might say that. You know, hey, I'm worried about, my backhand. I can't hit the backhand today on tennis or whatever it may be.
Wow.
Perfect. Let's go to the, trace the collarbones to the V, that little notch in the center. Yeah. So we'll go to the center here, and then from the center, come out about 1.5 inches or so, and you'll be between 2 ribs. And that's where we're going to tap.
Okay.
Yeah. And same thing. It's like I'm just focused on my heart, focus on whatever body part, voice, something that really sucks about not being good enough. I've always felt this way. I was embarrassed in front of my class because I was, missed a spelling bee word. I wasn't good enough.
It's always a spelling bee.
Yeah. I actually had a client who was a 13-year-old baseball player, and that was his issue. He came up, he didn't come in because of the spelling bee. He came in because all of a sudden he wanted to quit baseball. His dad brought him in, and it turns out that he had a similar feeling in his body when he was in 3rd grade, and he messed up on the spelling bee. And so he had messed up on the baseball field, same physical reaction in his body.
Yep.
His quickly went to that. When I asked him, have you ever felt like this before? He was like, boom, yes, in 3rd grade, spelling bee. Like, okay.
Got it. Yeah. I have a 3rd grade memory, so I got it.
Okay. All right. All right. Next spot here, last spot we'll do is kind of under the arm, right there, like, 4 inches under your armpit, if you will. I like to hug myself while I'm doing it, so I do 2 hands at once.
Together?
Yeah, together. Yeah. And some people always tap with 2 hands on on the spots that allow that, like the top of the head, the eyes, and all of that.
Wow.
All right. And we'll finish up here. Last one, I'm sorry, on the side of the hand. This is one of my favorite spots because this spot on the meridians is tied to the heart. And so parents will say to me sometimes, how did you get my kid to talk so much to you? Because he doesn't do that to us. And I just say, I just have my secret weapon here, which is right here. This spot is, I call it truth serum, and it just opens people up. Sometimes we'll just sit and talk just like this. I'll just say, you can switch hands whenever you want, and we'll just tap and talk for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And it is amazing what will come out of people's mouths, you know.
You're doing this on the field with all the athletes around, like everybody just watching one athlete at a time doing this? How does it?
That is like next generation stuff that, you know, will be there someday. I have tapped on the field with players, not institutionally, kind of like you just described, one at a time, but more of a, hey, coach, I'm in trouble here. Let's go. And we ran down the first baseline to get some privacy and did some stuff. But normally I'm just doing stuff on Zoom calls with clients. So they're isolated somewhere. And everybody, you can stop tapping now. Let's take a break. Breathe in through your nose and out through the mouth. And just check in with the body. See how my heart's doing. And you might even replay whatever was negative. And sometimes it'll feel better. Sometimes it'll feel worse, which is actually a good thing because it means we've stirred something up that we can continue to work on. And that was just like a very simple round of EFT. So congratulations to anybody who was practicing that with us.
Wow, that was really special. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I love that.
That's fun. It's never a bad time to tap.
Exactly. It's like talk about not only recovery, not only recovery. We don't always have to just be recovering from the trigger.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're just.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's like lifting weights or physical therapy. You know, you can go to the weight room to prevent injury, and you can also go to the weight room to rehab. You know, it's the same tool, and it can be used in multiple ways.
Wow. Thank you so much, Scott. And this has been. I kind of don't want to wrap up, but I know because the amount of conversations we opened and touched on were just so fascinating, and I'm extremely grateful for your vulnerable shares about your journey. I feel like that really hit home, and it opened my heart, and I'm sure it opened the listener's heart.
Good. I'm glad, and it's helpful for me as well. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for having me on your wonderful community here.
Thank you, Scott. I look forward to talking soon.
You got it, my friend.
Enjoy your night.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.